did you exactly come to know about ham radio? In my case, I read about ham radio long back when I was a high school student from astronomy books. I heard about Carl Jansky, who was a radio amateur who detected radio waves from outer space. That is how I first learned about ham radio. Then later, when I was at college, I read a newspaper article from a local daily which was mentioning about local ham radio operators. Till then, even though I had read about amateur radio from astronomy book, I never knew that they were right here in my state, and even in my city there were ham radio operators. So naturally I got interested and I visited some of them, and I had to wait a long time because I was studying till I could appear for the licensing examination. In India, there is a licensing examination conducted by the Ministry of Telecommunication, the Wireless Programming and Coordination Wing (WPC) of the Ministry of Communication, which conducts examinations. Examinations are conducted typically at the wireless monitoring stations. There are several wireless monitoring stations. In my region, one is there at the capital of the state, Trivandrum. And then if you go north, there is one in the neighboring state at Mangalore. So I didn't want to go any of these places at that time. And when I was doing my internship, there was an opportunity at Ernakulam, that is quite nearby, hardly 200 kilometers from here. There was a club, Kerala Amateur Radio League, I think, was organizing a test in their venue, and I went there and appeared. In those days, we could appear for grade 2 and grade 1 examination together, and I passed both, and I got grade 1 license after about 1 year. And still later, when I was doing my post-graduation, I could appear for the advanced grade. At that time, I was lucky. My club, or rather the club in our college itself, organized a test in our own college, and I could easily appear for the advanced grade. By the time I was already operating on the band, and it was easy for me. And I didn't have to appear for the Morse code again, as I already cleared the grade 1. So I got advanced grade, and that was almost a walkthrough. But now we don't have advanced grade and grade 1 and grade 2. In India, we have only 2 grades. One is the restricted grade and general grade. For restricted grade, you do not need to appear for the Morse code examination. You need only appear for the theory examination regarding basic electronics and radio regulations. While for general grade, you need, in addition to that is more questions are there for general grade, and in addition you have to appear for the Morse code test. You have to be capable of sending and receiving Morse code. How we used to learn Morse code in those days, after memorizing the characters for Morse code, we used to record. That is, we'll get a straight key, not the paddles, straight key, and we used to send the Morse code and record it in a tape recorder. In those days, mobile phones were not there. We would record in a tape recorder and play back. We would also send and receive. If you have a friend, you can send and the friend can receive. Friend can send and you can receive. Those are the ways we were practicing. Now, why should you become a ham radio operator? That's an important question, which many people ask me even now. What is the point in having a ham radio? Because you have such a lot of wonderful communication equipments. Of course, when I became a ham radio operator, these were not there. Mobile phones were not there. Even telephone, I didn't have a telephone at home at all in the early period of my career. So ham radio was really interesting for me because that is an interesting communication mode. But now so many chats and other things are there, internet, everything is there. So for just for communication, you don't need ham radio. That's one view which people say. For me, the thrill is still there because I got into the hobby long back, and still I cherish the hobby. And if you go to the social aspects, there are some important aspects which are being highlighted. Even now, ham radio is important. Even recently, during the Wayanad landslides, what happened was that the whole town on the hilltop was washed away, and all the communication infrastructure crumbled. This can happen anytime, anywhere. Even though redundancy is more these days, the chance of that occurring is lesser compared to previous years. But it all depends on the scale of the disaster. If the disaster is huge, there is always a probability. In Wayanad, fortunately, even though the disaster was huge, other areas which are not affected could be utilized. For example, my friend Viedo Oscar Juliet, Abraham was called by the district administration to go to the place and provide alternate communication network. Viedo Ajay immediately went to the district headquarters and established a base station there, and another team rushed to the ground zero. They could fortunately use Wayanad Phantom Rock VHF repeater, which was active, and the VHF repeater was on another hill which had line of sight communication to ground zero. So it was easy to establish a communication network from ground zero to the district headquarters through the Wayanad VHF repeater. And today only I read a report from Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, when there was a flood occurring in the region of Feni, similar situation occurred. A region was isolated, and a lot of ham radio operators from Dhaka were there trying to communicate with the region, and they could also do a lot of support in the relief work by providing alternate communication facility. For the younger generation coming to ham radio in these days, there are more things to think of. There are portable operations. There is something known as parks on the air, summits on the air, islands on the air. In parks on the air, equipment is taken to national parks and they operate portable stations from the national parks. This is an adventurous process, and even in advanced countries like United States, they say that when they are doing parks on the activation, they sometimes reach regions where there is no mobile coverage. In advanced countries also it can occur. Similarly, even in Australia, you can sometimes get out of cell coverage. Even though I am not operating parks on the air, there are so many people out there who are operating parks on the air in the US as well as in our region. Some operations I have heard of. That is interesting for youngsters coming to amateur radio. And if you are more interested in having a high stamina, you can also have summits on the air. You can go to large peaks and then operate ham radio from there. There is one of my friends in Bangalore, View 3 Zulu November Golf, who is very fond of summits on the air. He goes to high peaks, even as high as 22,000 feet. He has gone and operated ham radio from such heights. Then islands on the air, IOTA. The other one is SOTA. Islands on the air operations are also going on. Many ham radio operators from the eastern coast have gone for islands on the air operations recently also. I would monitor some of them on air, and I am happy to work some of them. Islands on the air. These are all adventurous programs for the younger generation who are interested in coming to ham radio. Another advanced activity for amateur radio is satellite operation. I am on the satellites on a small way, I am operating International Space Station and some of the low Earth orbit satellites. That requires only a lower setup. I am using that. I am happy to contact other radio amateurs on the ground through the FM repeater on International Space Station. Whenever the space station goes overhead in my region, I am able to contact them. More than that, there are other radio amateurs in India also who operate on digital modes using higher orbit satellite. There is a satellite known as Green Cube, which has an orbit at the range of 5,000 km. International Space Station is orbiting at about 420 km height, while medium orbit satellites MEO is at 5,000 km. And people are able to contact even United States using that satellite transponder, which is digital. And still higher, there is something known as geostationary amateur radio satellite. The only one out there is Qatar Oscar 100. Qatar Oscar 100 is a geostationary amateur radio satellite launched by the Qatar Amateur Radio Society. It is at an altitude of 36,000 kilometers. That is the standard altitude of geostationary satellites. Geostationary satellites move along with the Earth so that the satellite always appears at the same point above the Earth. You do not have to track your antenna or do any Doppler correction, which is needed for low Earth orbit and medium Earth orbit satellite. That is the advantage of geostationary satellite. Disadvantage is that you need much higher setup, more costlier setup for working geostationary satellite. Uplink for that satellite is 2.4 gigahertz band and downlink is on 10 gigahertz band. So you have to make a transmitter which will work in 2.4 gigahertz and a receiver for 10 gigahertz. Quite high range of frequency. Usually many use a transverter to convert from HF or VHF range to the super high frequency range. SHF 10 gigahertz is SHF band, super high frequency band. Still, there are few operators in India also who work through the Qatar Oscar 100 satellite. They use dish antennas. And these dish antennas point towards the direction of the satellite, just like what satellite TV receivers do. And there are also amateurs even in India who use the wideband transponder of Qatar Oscar 100 for DATV, that is digital amateur television. High definition television signals are sent and received by those operators. Those are some of the most advanced aspects of amateur radio which a new ham coming to amateur radio can be interested in. Then still later there are things which are coming up, but I do not know how much it will materialize. There is something known as the lunar gateway near the moon, which is going to come sometime later, and plans for amateur radio operations are there, but that I'll have to wait and see. It is not there at the moment. Maybe those things will come in a few more years to go. Thank you.